everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. I'm going to get right into the episode today because I am very excited. I'm talking to Maya Sanaiko and Susanna Thompson, the founders and two-thirds of the Bay Area band Sour Widows. And if you ain't never heard the Sour Widows, you should, because they're great. Okay, let me read you their bio very quickly. Originally meeting and becoming friends at Camp Win a Rainbow in their youth, Maya and Susanna formed Sour Widows in 2017 when they found themselves living near one another for the first time. Eventually, they invited drummer Max Edelman to join them in the band, and since then they've released two fantastic EPs, a self-titled one in 2020 and Crossing Over in 2021. In 2023, they recorded their first full-length album, Revival of a Friend, at Tiny Telephone, that's John Vanderslice's studio. John Vanderslice, former guest on this show. Check out that episode. And it will be released on Exploding in Sound Records at the end of the month, just next week, folks. So this is really a delight, especially as we get further and further into the episode and we kind of really get in deep on some of these topics. You know, Maya and Susanna were game to go on the Beginnings journey. You know, as I've been asking for the last 2 years, especially as everything crumbles, why do you want to make art? Why do you want to share art with others? Especially if you're younger than me, if you were born maybe late 90s or into the 2000s. All you've ever really known is, you know, whatever, like Iraq, financial collapse, Afghanistan, Trump, COVID. Like, it's just been this succession of fucked up things. And in light of that, is there a more forceful moral push to do something for the greater good? You know, paint Stonehenge, destroy a pipeline, etc., etc. Because the folks younger than me are going to be facing more of their lives in dystopia. And I'm struggling with this stuff. You know, I've lived most of my life in a decadent but functional world, but a lot of people younger than me are facing the majority of their lives in dysfunction, or at least societal dysfunction. I'm kind of curious how that affects your existential choices. And Maya and Susanna had some very interesting answers, and then we get into a lot of other stuff. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you find this meaningful in some way. I love their EPs. I'm very excited for their album to come out next week. Okay, quickly, before we get into the episode, some of the usual Beginnings intro stuff. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from. Leave a review if it's Apple Podcasts. I think you can also do it on Spotify. At least you can click 5 stars. I've been doing the show for over 14 years. I've talked to hundreds of musicians and TV writers and authors and actors and journalists and comedians, etc., etc., etc. So there's always going to be someone I think you find interesting. So check out the back catalog. Follow me on social media, mostly pictures of the animals and Naomi on Instagram. Jokes on Blue Sky, I guess some stuff on Twitter. And I'm Andy Beckerman at all of those things. I'm going to take a couple weeks off to finish some writing stuff that I have to get done. So the show will be on hiatus for a bit, but when we're back in a couple weeks, I don't know who we is. I do everything here. But when I'm back in a couple weeks, got some more interviews with musicians and TV and comic writers. So look forward to those. But for now, let's talk to Maya and Susanna. I was about to talk about Raging Bull because I saw that last night for the first time. A friend of mine has a podcast where they watch movies for the first time, and they're doing Martin Scorsese, and I'd never seen Raging Bull, so I thought I would check it out. And the Robert De Niro's character, Jake LaMotta, is like this dumb, and maybe dumb because he's been hit in the head so much and has CTE, or is just dumb. I don't know the answer. But suspicious acts violently based on no evidence throughout the entire movie. I don't know if you've ever seen Raging Bull, but
No.
I'm just like, oh, this is America. Like, this is this guy who is just like, violently reacts to everything. I'm like, oh, this is the country I'm living in.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's where I am emotionally. Sorry, I'm just telling you where I am at the moment.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Yep.
I think we're there too.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how old you both are. I'm guessing somewhere in your late 20s, early 30s.
Mm-hmm. Late 20s, yeah.
And I'm kind of curious when I think about this kind of stuff. Like, I at least had the illusion that things were okay. Not always. I'm Jewish, so like I grew up, and you get like the Holocaust kind of like injected into your veins like heroin when you're young, and so you're just kind of like, you grow up with this. And also, I grew up in a very Christian area, so there's this like kind of awareness of. I mean, up until you start reading like Chomsky, and then you're like, oh, okay, I know what's actually going on. But like, I at least had kind of the illusion for about 20 years that like, oh, things are kind of okay. And yeah, there's going to be climate change and that stuff. But you guys are younger. And I'm curious if there's a more kind of, if you're late 20s, so, you really became human beings in sometime the aughts, like post 9/11.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of like what is the mentality you grow up with? If does that question make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I think, we were both like around 6 when 9/11 happened. And I think like, I just remember being a little kid and thinking it was like a normal, I thought you were like supposed to hate the president. I thought that was like but a normal part of life is like, I don't know. That was like my first concept of like the government was like.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were very not about Bush, so. I don't know. Like, yeah, we were not. That wasn't a great time, I guess. But I feel like it was, I don't know, like you become a young adult and then you get disillusioned with stuff. Or like you're experiencing being jaded for the first time or something. And I feel like that just probably happened and like really stuck for our age group. I don't know. I don't know like anyone who has real faith in the government, like at all.
Yeah.
No one I'm friends with, definitely not.
Do you think that altered and I don't know how you can answer this, but I'm just going to ask it anyway, and maybe it leads somewhere. Do you think that altered the direction of your life? Because I'm thinking like the Bush years drove me insane because I watched like a kind of, again, not a peaceful country. We were still doing fucked up things in the 90s abroad and domestically, but it wasn't as murderous as it was once Bush got into power. And so, again, like I had this 20 years where, like, again, obviously Reagan, like, all these people are monsters. But they were monsters on a lower level.
I disagree.
I think Reagan's like the worst. I don't know.
On a lower level in terms of publicity, right? It wasn't publicized in a way.
I think people really hated Reagan. I obviously wasn't alive when Reagan was president, but I feel like he's like probably arguably the most hated president in history.
Now.
Wouldn't you say so?
Now, I'm telling you then, I mean, I was a child, but I'm saying like in a way that it wasn't publicized. It wasn't, Iran-Contra happened when I was a kid, the savings and loans, all these things happened when I was a kid, and none of it ever kind of poked through to a massive, it was just like a thing that happened in the news, and you're just like, oh yeah, and so you would hear your parents kind of chat about it, but they weren't, none of the adults that I knew, unless they hid it very well, which they could have, had the same kind of like when things got so fucking Islamophobic after 9/11, it didn't have that tenor earlier, and that's why I'm like, you grew up like that was just normal. I don't mean Islamophobia was normal for you, but I just mean that like you grew up in this. And when everything was so tense and you kind of knew these people were motherfuckers.
Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely.
I think at every point in history, it really depends on, like, who you are and what community you're growing up in, probably.
Yeah.
I think there's, like, always a tendency to maybe feel like things weren't as bad, quote unquote, on some level. Like, that just seems like a natural way of, like, reflecting on history. And I think, like, yeah, I don't know. I think
it depends on where, like, who you're around. I'm sure there
and the way you're being affected by the policies of the government.
Definitely. I'm sure there were a lot of people during Reagan's presidency who were like, this is the worst, you know. But I also think, I don't know, we don't have to talk about politics the whole time, but I do think, like, the unique moment we're in is just, like, decline of the empire, like, pretty clearly. I feel like we're just, like, experiencing the first stage of, like, I don't know.
Descent.
Whatever. Yeah, the descent into, like, something pretty rough, I think, is on the horizon.
Well, I think that's why I bring this up. By the way, I almost never have two guests on. Do you want to introduce yourself so people know the different voices, please?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm Maya. I'm guitar and vocals, or one half guitar and vocals in Sour Widows.
And I'm Susanna, and I'm the other half.
You won't remember this probably, but that was very 120 Minutes, like MTV's alt rock show from like the 90s.
Perfect. That's what we're going for.
It really sounded like an introduction there.
Bring it back.
I think, Maya, what you're hitting upon is why I'm asking these questions is because you're younger than me. I'm having these kind of like existential battles in my own head about like, what is it worth? What do I do? You know, I have another, if I'm lucky, 40 years on this earth. And I'm like, as it's crumbling around me, I'm like, where do I put my energy? And because you're younger than me, I'm kind of curious if it is if it's the norm for you, so you don't have these kind of like these battles going on in your brain, or if it is a problem for both of you. That's where I'm kind of like aiming.
It's definitely a massive problem for both of us, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
In every possible way. And I think, at least for me, like, I think the effect of that is it steals my resolve in one way, because, I mean, I already feel like I don't have a choice about, like, I kind of feel like there's, like, one thing I'm here to do mm-hmm. that feels like it gives my life meaning, and that's, like, create art with people I love. So in one way, it's like everything is collapsing around me, and so with the very like limited time we have on this earth, I want to do. It's like there's no illusions for me about like what other directions I can go in my life, myself specifically. Like, I didn't go to college. One reason being like I knew I wanted to be a musician and I didn't want to be in debt. And then, so I feel like my own like personal options are like a little limited about like, oh, there's some job I could go out and get for myself that like can offer me a lot of stability and wealth, you know? So I'm like, everything is falling apart. What better reason to live this life doing something that actually feels fulfilling? And I also strongly believe like people need art and music to survive and live happy lives. And I know it matters to people because people go to shows to see others perform, and you know, we all know how powerful music is. So yeah, for me, I'm like, I know that this has cultural worth, even if the society I live in every day says that it has no value.
Yeah, I think because of that, it's like being an artist in this day and age in the US specifically, I think is like already anti-establishment in a way. I think unless you're like extremely famous and like maybe independently wealthy and have like crazy industry support or something, I think it's like already kind of like American cultural values to be like dedicating all your time to being an artist. So I already feel like there's kind of a like, yeah, just like an anti-establishment vibe to pursuing that. And so I think if that's like what you're committing your life to, you have an understanding that things are like not how they're supposed to be, I guess. Because if my life is built around valuing a craft that I believe is like one of the most powerful forces in human history that we all can find meaning in, and like on an existential level, brings us joy and purpose, maybe even. If that's like what I'm building my life around, and people are like, okay, well, you just need to be like making a lot more of this product and putting it online and marketing yourself, and also like have this a 5-headed social media presence where you're constantly branding your life and being political but not too political, and political in the right way, and look a certain way, and limit how you're speaking about yourself and other people in art and what you care about. Like, I don't know, you kind of have to just not care. Like, you have to not care about this sounds so lame, but like, you have to not care about like the mainstream cultural value, because it's already anti-art. Like, it already, the forces in control of our lives like don't give a shit about what we're doing. So you just kind of got to make your own meaning out of it, I think. That's just like what everyone has to do though in life. If we're talking existential, like, you got to figure it out for yourself, because this is bullshit. I don't know. Like, we're living in a really, it's a hard time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I'm asking these questions, because I'm really trying to figure out how fraught was the decision to want to do this. You know, Suzanne, you say like, I didn't go to college because I didn't want the debt. You know, this is why I'm like trying to suss out. And I really do. I think it's not just 9/11. It's like Bush v. Gore, which was the first kind of like inkling about how corrupt the Supreme Court really is as an entity. And that was this, like, I really take this as this dividing line, because at the very least, as a culture before that, there was a kind of, I'll say, pretension that art was important. And then as the 21st century has moved on, I think it really has become, like, as capitalism, as the kind of crises multiply, and it really is a short-sighted measure after short-sighted measure, where the only thing that's important, like in my industry, right, you have like one of the CEOs of one of the biggest studios just throwing movies out wholesale in order to juice the stock price.
Yeah.
So bad.
And it's just like, oh, that is like it's not, this is not even art. This is not like these are, whatever, Godard films. They're like, it's a Looney Tunes film, but still.
It looked sick, I have to say.
Sure, it looks funny. But I'm saying, like, it's not, I'm not pretending like, they're throwing out, one of the top 50 films of the 21st century.
Yeah.
But still, I think it's lost all its meaning. For this, what you're saying, I know it does sound lame to say it out loud, but it's true. A kind of like whatever is in the zeitgeist, the mainstream zeitgeist is, in my mind, I tend to visualize stuff, and I'm just visualizing like a snarling kind of like panther with like very sharp teeth. And that's all it is in my mind, is just this kind of like rabid animal. And I realize that's a lot of metaphor. What I'm really trying to aim at is, was it a fraught decision for you to say, I want to make art. I want to do this with my life. Or did you have to have a dark night of the soul? Either of you or both of you?
No,
Not
it's
at all.
really easy.
What I'll say is this. I think the state of the world obviously shapes all of our lives. And I think for me, how terrible everything is and how coincidentally more difficult it makes the lives of artists only clarifies for me how badly I want this and how clarifies the way I want my life to look and what actually matters to me. I think it just, for me at least, it's like, okay, it just makes it this much harder. And it shows me like that this is how dedicated to like what I believe in. I think I would have made this choice no matter like what my life looked like, no matter like how much more privileged I could be. And maybe things just would have been easier if the world wasn't so fucked up. Or like if my individual, like, you know, my life, like where I'm posited in the world, if it was more or less like advantageous, like I think I would make the same choice no matter what. It just, yeah.
I always wanted to be an artist.
Totally.
Of some kind. I always wanted to be like, in public performing. Like that's all I wanted to do since I can remember. I think you have to be like on some level kind of delusional to pursue art. Like you have to have a really, strong sense of your self-worth, like on some kind of, like we're talking existential. I think it's like an existential level, like, and I think, yeah, I don't know what would have like had to happen for me to be like, no, I'm not going to be an artist. I like genuinely have just always wanted to pursue art as a life path. My parents are also artists, and so I feel like I had like an understanding that was like a worthwhile pursuit in your life, you know, like they're very supportive of me. So I think that's actually a huge part of it. Like that's a massive privilege, I think, to have parents who are supportive of your life path as an artist.
Absolutely.
But also I think just to have the framework of like, oh yeah, that's like a normal thing to spend your life doing is performing arts. Like that's a job, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a job and it's worthwhile. It's like it's a normal part of life or something. Whereas I think a lot of people who are artists don't ever have that kind of relationship, like with parents or family. It can be very disapproving. We're really lucky that was never a thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything like practical about pursuing art. Like, even if we weren't in some kind of, well, probably if we weren't living in like this like rampant weird capitalist society that's like totally chaotic and out of control and like skewing our perspective of like what commodities are, I think maybe like it would feel more normal to pursue art. But yeah, just like there's nothing really practical about it, and so you kind of, if that doesn't matter to you, then you're just gonna do it. So that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, same.
And I think to be an artist and like creative on a certain level, you have to think beyond practicality. You can't be thinking in these like real world physical terms of like what is like logical and important and to like the physical realm or something, because it's so like third eye like in this way where you're, you know, like what our imagination and creativity and perception, like how that all relates and where that comes from is kind of a mystery. So yeah, it's like not very practical, but that's kind of the nature of it, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So then this is the mystery that I want to kind of unravel is how was your delusion protected? Because if that bubble gets popped, then suddenly you enter the real world and you're like, I don't know about this anymore. Now, what were you about to say, Maya?
Well, it's just, that's a really good question. And like, I'm thinking of I'm just thinking about, all the times that the bubble has popped for us.
We protect each other's delusions.
Yeah, I think we are the, we're in a shared delusion that we protect at all
our own
costs,
design,
and we feed in each other to make sure that we're equally deluded to continue it.
What is it? There's a French term for that. I wish I could remember it.
Delusion.
Delusion.
For a shared delusion specifically.
Ooh,
I forget what it is
in English.
A dream.
But so Maya, you said you're. You said your parents were artists. Were they professional artists?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what did they do? What was their medium?
My dad is an actor and a teacher, and my mom is a director / writer / also theater teacher.
Okay.
So they're both academics, but they're also working artists and have been doing that my whole life.
Like, you've seen them in performances, or you've seen your mother direct
My whole life.
performances?
Yeah, my whole life. I've seen them also collaborate. Like,
Interesting. What is their, when they collaborate or on their own, like, what's their thing? Like, is it Shakespeare? Is it Beckett? Where, Ionesco?
They're like, yeah, I feel like they're in the kind of like they had they were in a very avant-garde, like, theater company in Chicago in the late 80s, early 90s. Like,
Real heads.
Yeah, they're like OG pretentious theater people.
Okay. So, like, left of Steppenwolf, even.
Yeah, I would, but like that era for sure. Like they're very inspired by Commedia dell'arte, which is like this Italian form of theater, very old, with a lot of masks and like heavy makeup, and it's a very like stylized kind of theater. And they built the company my dad was in and that my mom was also in for a minute, like, was kind of built around that style. But yeah, they like do all kinds of stuff. They're both teachers. That's kind of how they make a living, to be honest. Having 3 kids, you gotta do something like that.
Uh-huh.
Maya and I were each, as they said, like, we are both extremely fortunate, I think, to have been raised in families and by parents who were just really supportive of, like, whatever you want to do, like, do it. We trust you. Like, both of our parents really trusted us, which, like, that must have taken a lot of strength, especially looking at, like, what my life looked like after high school and, like, up until we started the band. I mean, even when we started the band, it's like 7 years, we're still working on it. But yeah, so I think that, like, coming back to your, like, what protects your delusion, I think having familial support is, like, everything. When you can have it, like, that's a massive privilege. And and I think,
people, like, having the close people in your life believe in you. Literally, just being like,
it can get you through so much.
What you're doing matters and is worthwhile. Like, whether that's your birth family, your chosen family, your friends, your collaborators, just the people who you feel like their perspective of you is what you really care about at the end of the day. Like, if they're on your team, like, that's huge.
We both have parents who pursued pretty, like, alternative lifestyles to some extent in some way and really, like, forged paths for themselves. Like, my family definitely values art a lot. Both of my parents are, like, artsy people who, like, my mom's life was, like, totally nuts the way that she figured all of her stuff out. She was, like, a very alternative person who came from, like, a more conventional family, I guess, and she was like an acupuncturist, clairvoyant, like, she had a really trippy life, and she knew what she wanted and she made it happen. She's like, I want a loving family. I want like an expansive, abundant life. And it took a lot of hard work and motivation, but she was like a huge inspiration for me as far as like, you know, like create the reality you want to see, like
manifest.
Yeah, manifest. Yeah, there's a lot
Like
to
The
be
Secret
said
or
about
something more esoteric than The Secret.
I don't know what The Secret is.
That's where the whole idea of manifesting, as far as I know, comes from. It was like a very, I think it was like an Oprah book club.
I thought it was like
thing.
the Da Vinci Code. I thought The Secret was like fiction.
I mean, I say that in like kind of a joking way of like, you know, I think that I just had parents who were like, they were clear about the kind of life they wanted to create for themselves. And, yeah, obviously like there's a lot of ways that you can forge that path for yourself, and you can get a lot of help along the way. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But, just like having the courage to like do something that looks different, I think, and making that life for yourself when it's possible for you. I mean, I feel like I've said the word like privilege a lot, but like that, you know, that's a factor for sure.
Definitely.
And it's good to be real about that. And also, I don't think that has to like be the only thing that, I don't know. I feel really strongly that like when you have like a passion and a vision for your life, it like, it's important to trust yourself and
intuition.
Like, yeah, trust yourself and trust your gut and like do whatever you have to do to make that vision a reality.
I also think that, well, respect to anyone who's an artist who has like zero support and continues to grind like as hard as possible. Like zero support in their personal life and like maybe even like are hated by the public. Like I think, you know, like, or just like don't have no fans, like, but they're like, I'm an artist, this is what I'm doing. Like, I don't know.
I guess there has to be some kind. I do think that if you're going
like,
to make
wasn't
art,
Van Gogh like nobody liked his art?
Someone had to. I mean, but he was also
he was crazy.
Quote unquote
he died
mad.
in poverty for sure.
Yeah,
with one less year.
He
than
got
he
a lot
came
of
with.
trouble back then, but that's what I'm saying is just like I think there's the power of self belief, but then I think also like we're talking about now, it's like I do think that there's like a weird energetic power in like gaining the support of other people, like that can surpass other like kind of real life obstacles.
Yeah.
You know, I think any art, like, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. AC/DC said it best, you know, truly, they did.
Yeah. No, I have a whole book of inspirational quotes from Angus Young, so I get it.
Oh, hell yeah.
But I mean, I think that's the question that I always have is what makes you want to make art in public in the first place? Because I don't look, if not you personally, but I'm saying if one is hated and no one likes their art and they don't have any, I'm like, why are you doing it? Why not just make art for yourself? You don't have to share it. If no one likes it, you don't have to put it out anywhere. You know, I do think, you know, this is like the Emily Dickinson question, which is why, and this is not for you necessarily, but it's like if someone is making art that no one's interested in, there's no reason not to just like keep it in a shoebox under your bed.
Why is anyone the way they are, or why is anything the way it is? You know,
Well,
like you come in with
some stuff, I think. But luckily there are people who do like our art, and so that's
Right.
like enough for us to kind of keep going.
Right. That's why I was saying it's not for you. I'm a
Yeah.
fan. That's why I want to talk to you. Right. I don't
Even
talk
if we
to
have one
anyone.
fan.
I'm highly recommending the shoebox approach for Summer, but
I don't talk to
Yes,
anyone
you
on the
do.
show that I don't want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So this wasn't for you, but the underlying question though is for both of you. Why do it in public? Like, what is it that motivates you to want to connect with art versus you can connect with any other way? Like, what was it that, you know, because what I'm getting from you, you know, my wife and I talk about this. She's an actor and a stand-up. You know, we talk about the fact that we have voids in us and they were created by our parents, not intentionally, but our parents are not thrilled necessarily with it. Now that we found a little bit of success, they're a little more accepting. But they were not thrilled that we wanted to do this. And it seems like you had the opposite. So I'm kind of curious, do you have voids? If you have voids in you, how were they created? Or what's the other reason, if not a void, to create art in public for you both?
Came in this way, seriously.
I think that, I think it's like part of life to have a drive to like leave some kind of impression or be part of the like long-standing human history. I don't know, like a cultural tradition. So there's that. And then also, I think everyone, like most people will experience some kind of like negative feedback from others in their life. Whether you're bullied as a kid or, you have like unsupportive parents or whatever, or like larger systemic factors or all of the above, like, I think that can kind of create a drive to prove something.
But what about you specifically?
I mean, yeah, like, I don't know, like,
I have an answer, as you think.
Okay, go ahead.
Unless you're about to
No, you
say
go,
something.
you go. I don't have any idea.
Well, what I was going to say is, it's super fun, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, okay, like, I feel like this goes into my delusional way of looking at life, is like, the idea of magic is like really important to me. And I think as like I go through life and, face hard times or, difficulties, what have you, like, what I always come back to is like, I really want to live a life that feels magical and where, I don't always know what's going to happen. There's not like a formula to it. Mm. Like that feels really inspiring to me. Like the idea of adventure and like the like romanticism in that. And the stage is such a beautiful container for play, like truly. And, it's like, it can become anything. I mean, we met at a circus performing arts summer camp when we were children. That's how we met. But, so since I was a little kid, and I know Maya's the same way, like, I've always been fascinated by that space. Like, the idea of, like, getting up on stage, doing something, having people, like, seeing you and taking in what it is that you're doing and affecting them in some way. And it's also like, I think there's a lot of different things you can do in life that can take you to this place, but like performing is as present as you can possibly be. Yeah. At least for me, that's how I feel. It's like, you're just in the present moment. Like that's it. You can't be thinking about the past or the future. Or if you are, like that means you're distracted.
Yeah.
In your performance. And I think it's like, you can attain the same thing like in sports or like, I don't know, like doing anything where there's a level of performance to some degree, giving a lecture or like things like that, meditation. So I think that's like always really fascinating to me and is something that like I really need in order to feel like connected to what life is about to me. And I experienced the same thing being an audience member. And that for me is how I know that like, it's really like sad to me how I feel like there's a lot of this like internalized shame in artists around performance, because I think the culture we live in, like at large, it's like conflates like it conflates like the desire to perform with a desire for like an egoistic experience or like, you know, it's like a self-serving act.
Yeah.
Which I like totally reject. And I feel like, yeah, case in point, like people want to go to shows, like people want to see others perform. And I like wholeheartedly participate in that as an artist of like, I love going to shows and seeing people perform. Like it's an incredible experience. Like being at a show, seeing live music are some of the best moments of my life. And same thing with performing. Like it's magic. Like that's so magical when you can be in a room of people where like everyone is like opting into this experience just like for the pure sake of opting in, of like everyone coming together just to like,
It's the shared delusion.
it's the shared delusion.
You're creating your own reality.
right there.
I mean, think about seeing a play or something. Like, that's the world I grew up in. It's like, obviously none of these people are actually the people that they say they are. There's like already these layers of non-reality to it. Yeah.
Magic is real.
I completely agree. It is about magic, creating magic and experiencing magic.
Communal experience.
Communal experience, yeah, brings you together, I think. If you're in public, you know.
Yeah. What led you both to this circus camp when you were younger?
My really close friend, she went and it sounded really fun. So I went. And Susanna's older brother went, and then she went. So yeah, we grew up in like kind of like hippie-ish communities also, and this is like a very hippie type community camp. So it makes sense that we were involved.
In the Bay Area?
The camp itself, so it was started by Wavy Gravy, if you know who that is.
I do.
Yes, it's his camp. MC of Woodstock, beat poet, activist legend. He's done a lot of good things in the world, I would say. Cool person. Him and his wife. But, yeah, the camp itself is like in Northern California, kind of like rural Northern California.
Humboldt County?
Like on the 101. Yeah, like Mendocino County. Yeah.
Wait, Susanna, did your family, were they from the Bay Area in the first place?
Kind of. I was born in Oakland and grew up in the East Bay the first years of my life, but I mostly grew up like Central Valley, like outside of Stockton, and then in Davis. So me and Maya never lived in the same place until we started the band.
Okay. And Maya, your family from Chicago, what made your parents end up in the Bay Area? Was it a teaching job? Was it because they liked the culture?
My mom is from Berkeley, and so pretty much her whole immediate family lived out here. My dad's from Chicago. They met on the East Coast, moved to Chicago briefly, and then moved back to Massachusetts, which is where I was born. And then they got a job at a school out in Marin, which is where I grew up.
Okay. And when you say grew up in hippie communities, what does that exactly mean? Does that just mean that was the vibe, or was there something more specific that made it quote unquote hippie?
No, it was the vibe. Like my parents were, they met in like a small rural community in Vermont, all theater people, artists, like kind of like there were some like trust fund hippies out there who were kind of creating the like the ability for people to be doing that stuff. And then obviously like the Bay Area is very, very hippie-ish, and I was spending my childhood in like Fairfax in Marin County, which is like a kind of like historic hippie-ish, Grateful Dead, Joan Baez coded small town, which is, that's where I'm from.
Susanna, another thing I was curious about, when you say, this idea of magic, where, was it just you're getting this from your mother when you were younger? This idea, where is it coming from?
I feel like my personality is just kind of naturally that way. Like I'm just a big romantic. But definitely was totally fostered by my mom and my dad. They're both like, like quirky, people who were like really loved nature. Like I grew up backpacking a lot. And yeah, just like being incredibly blessed to have like two loving parents was like, yeah, that's like a huge part of my story, I think, which I'm so grateful to have. But yeah, I think my mom was just like an incredible person who is just like full of love and gratitude and is like the most empathetic person who I've ever known. And she really like, yeah, she really fed the idea like in me that like, I'm a special person. Like I have something, like things that I do can matter. And like I was just raised with a lot of beliefs that are like very alternative, and it just sort of makes like magic and unexplainable parts of life just sort of like a fact, just a fact of nature, kind of. Like we can't explain it, it's just the way things are, and there's meaning in that as well. So
did you grow up feeling weird for those beliefs? I don't mean weird as internally. No. I'm just asking, you know, one of the things that I try to like figure out on this show is, you know, I think in some way you have to be othered in order to pursue art for real, as opposed to like making just like commodities. And I'm curious if you saw yourself as apart from the culture because of those beliefs, or if you saw it as being just a part and parcel, and you were just occupying a smaller space. Again, not everyone. These aren't hard and fast rules. It's not like everyone, like all these things that I look for are like are qualities every single person has. But I'm just kind of curious.
Totally. I mean, I think everyone has the capacity to feel otherness, and I think every person does in some way in their experience. At least like a lot of people seem that they feel they do. On an existential level.
Even people that I would be like, there's no reason for you to feel that way, like on like a kind of like a realistic level, I think it's just like part of the human experience probably is to feel like, I'm not like everybody else.
Maybe, but they don't acknowledge it, or they don't, like a lot of people I know just follow a script that they think they're supposed to follow.
Yeah, totally.
So maybe you're right, but they don't acknowledge it, or they don't honor it, maybe is what I'm trying to say. Whereas you both honor that in whatever capacity that you do. And that's what I'm curious about.
I mean, I think like from an external perspective, both Maya and I have like, you know, different identities that are like naturally othered in the state of the world, but like I wouldn't say that those experiences are like the singular, like, yeah, that's not like the driving force, I think, for like creating. I feel like,
right,
like Maya, like as long as I can remember, I've just always wanted to make things, and I think that like, yeah, like, I think the painful experiences you have over the course of your life can, like, widen your perspective of life. Like, it can, or it can make you more narrow-minded, I suppose, but yeah, like, you have something to say, Maya.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about, so, like, it's interesting that we started this conversation with you asking about our, like, being kids post 9/11, because, like, I was super bullied after 9/11, like, in middle school, or elementary school, middle school, because I'm Middle Eastern, and, like, not even, like, I'm not, like, Muslim, like, that's not my family's, like, my ancestry, but, yeah, especially, like, being in Marin, which is super white, and, like, not necessarily looking like everybody else. Like, I definitely was, like, pretty bullied by some people for, like, several years. And so I think that definitely made me feel like an outsider. But because I was always artistic and always like unafraid to be like in the school plays, and like I started playing guitar and like writing songs when I was like 9, and would play little like open mics, youth showcases, that kind of thing. And people thought I was really good. And so because I had that, like, this kind of feeling of like, okay, well, I'm talented. Like, I am good at this stuff. I have this like undeniable talent. Like, even if I was like, had like no friends, or my friends were super mean to me, like, which is what happened for like the beginning of middle school and like parts of elementary school as well. Like, this is not, you cannot deny that I have this talent. And like, that kind of, even on like a less wholesome level, I believe for me, like, I don't think it's actually wrong to have ego as an artist. Like, I agree that there's like a weird conflation between like the desire to perform and like being selfish or something. But I think for me, it's like, I'm also trying to give my life meaning and like feel good about who I am in the world. And like all of these kind of realistic factors of who we are and like how we're perceived, that fully impacts our ability to achieve our dreams. You know, like that's not like, I'm not deluded about that, you know? That's like a big part of my experience actually as an artist and pursuing art. But, yeah, I think just because like it felt like sometimes that was like what I was like, that was what my value was. It was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not like the most popular person or like wearing the right clothes or looking a certain way or like blah, blah, blah. I still can connect with people because I'm like gifted at this thing. And that, I think that's like a huge part of my sense of my own value as a person, is just in those times I remember feeling like kind of like worthless or not good about myself, how you do when you're a teenager growing up, like most people do. That was like what I had to feel good about myself. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm like this like weird looking, you know, like brown kid or something, but I'm like really good at acting and I'm really good at singing and playing guitar and writing songs. And so like, fuck everything else, because that's impressive to people. And that's like goes beyond kind of like this superficial shit that is like maybe affecting my life day to day, like at school or something, you know? Like, that was always like, it kind of like went beyond the appearance type of thing for me. And yeah, I think that actually is like a huge part of it for me, is the kind of like feeling good about myself and like having a sense of self-worth. And I definitely think that it can be like a thing of like, that's how I feel good about myself, is like being in the spotlight in that way, because it's like validating, you know, that I'm not going to like pretend that it's this like completely this like wholesome drive to be like an artist, you know? Yeah. That's like my existential purpose, but it's also about the real world, you know? Like, that's very important to me too.
Yeah. It's not a dispassionate moral duty, right? No one would, I don't think, not no one, but very few people would make art if that's what it was. If you were just this like stoic, you know, 18th century philosopher who was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. There has to be, I think the danger, and I see it all around me in Los Angeles, the danger is when that when the narcissistic impulse metastasizes.
Yeah, and becomes the only reason why you're making anything. And you have, yes, people all around you because you're successful to a degree that you can have that. And then everything you make turns to shit and people are saying, don't stop. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Keep doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
luckily we don't have that. So we're each other's yes people.
Okay.
Luckily, we're not famous, I guess, or massively successful.
Well, I mean, I have two questions, and I guess this is something I've never really asked before, but I'm kind of curious. Like, what do you have a goal? Like, is the goal just make music, live off of being able to support ourselves doing this? Or is there, is the goal AC/DC? Is the goal marry Timony? Is the goal, like, is there a certain person that you're like, I want to be that level. I think that's the right level to be. Or is it more of a like, no, I just want to do this and I don't have an actual direction. There's not a person orienting me in a certain way.
I mean, definitely when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be famous. Like, everyone I like and look up to is like Jimi Hendrix or like, I don't know who else. I loved Jimi Hendrix when I started playing guitar. But, I was like, I want to be a rock star. That's how I felt. I still feel that way. I want to be like at Madison Square Garden. I'm not kidding. Like if I achieve that in my life, that's going to be so sick. Like that would be amazing for me as an individual and also to get to like have that kind of connective power to a huge crowd. I don't know, like
Dream big.
Yeah, dream big.
Like, why not? It's like, it's already like double down. Let's go. It's like, if it's like we're dedicating our lives to this, I think we definitely, speaking of shared delusion, like since day one of starting this band, like we've been goal oriented and like,
oh my God.
really serious about it. It's actually like,
it's really funny.
It's been like over time, like tempered into something that's like a lot more, like palatable, I would say, or we've really found our stride as collaborators and sharing a project. But like the first thing we did as a band was like book ourselves a DIY tour because we just wanted to tour. So we did like a tour of the West Coast and, like literally having just started the band, like, playing shows in a basement to maybe like 10 people. And things were so intense. We were like, for us, because we would like play the show and then we'd have like these like intense debriefs about the set and like how things went and like seriously.
That's crazy. I mean, it's like
that is why we are here today for sure, is taking ourselves that seriously. Like
day one.
I mean, we
were cold calling venues in like Arcata to book like a Tuesday night set with no other bands or like 5 other bands,
yeah, one of the
like two. And we're like, they're not picking up, like we have to email again, like bump the email. Like it was crazy. It was not normal.
Like we didn't like grow up in a music scene. Like where I grew up, there wasn't like a DIY music scene. Like also not really for Maya either.
No.
Our experience of shows and music was like going to a concert in San Francisco, So when we started the project, like we didn't have any other friends who were in bands. We didn't know anyone else really making music in the Bay Area. We've always felt like outsiders in that way, where it's like there are like scenes in the Bay kind of, but like we don't fit into any of them really. Like the kind of rock music that was like popular in the Bay when we started was like surf rock or like kind of like shoegazy pop stuff. That's just like not what we make. And most of our time playing music in the first like 3 years of the band was like almost all on tour. Just DIY tour after DIY tour. Like we
like
just
not even playing in the Bay.
barely even playing in the Bay. Like we just wanted to be on the road and like meet people and like be out in the world. And that has formed us into this project that's like, we're very like identified with this kind of just national general DIY scene of musicians. And those are the connections that have like really persevered for us in our time as a band. And like now we're like starting to see the fruits of like our labors and the labors of our peers and like people like really starting to do well and gain some notoriety, which is like so inspiring to see. But yeah, like we really like came from the dirt. Like this band. It's like all of our like all the money like that has been poured into this project has been like from me and Maya, you know, like working service jobs forever and like going into credit card debt and like still, you know, like that, like the band is truly like fueled from the fires of our delusions. It's like,
I think you have to be steadfast in your self-belief in order to achieve literally anything.
Yeah. Okay. I want to start sewing this up. So that's a big question that I have is, was there a point in your lives where you actually, it wasn't just like, oh, this is what I do. Like it wasn't just naturally, it's you actually made the decision like, okay, this is me, this is my life now. And I have this ambition. I'm going to honor it or however, like, was that ever an actual decision you made or was it just kind of you naturally slid into it?
It was day one of the band.
Yeah, I think when we formed the band, it was kind of like, okay, we are in a band now.
We both really wanted this type of life. Like, I mean, I would like the most existentially anxious in a way that I ever was in my life was like the period of time between like graduating high school and like starting the band. Like the 4 years that everyone was at school, like I knew I wanted to be a musician and have a band and like I would do solo stuff and like play shows and whatever. But like, I was like, this isn't like, I wasn't exactly sure how to make it happen. And then I was living in the Bay. Maya graduated from school and moved home. We were like living in the same place for the first time, having been friends since we were like 13. And we were like, okay, neither of us know what we're doing with our lives right now. Like, let's take this opportunity and just like start a band because we both want that. And from that moment forward, it has been the like central grounding thing in my life. Like we both have gone through a lot of like really tough shit since then. And yeah, like losing my mom a few years ago is like was like earth shattering for me. She was like the person I was closest to in my life. And having the band was like really felt like kind of the only thing that got me through that. Just like having a project to work on and like having this like touchstone and like also having the blessing of getting to do a project with like two of my best friends ever. Like Maya was the first person to come to my house the morning that my mom died. Like we've been through everything together. I've been through many things together.
Yeah.
And so that it's like, it goes beyond just like, at least for the two of us, like it goes beyond just even our own like personal goals and like desires to create art and perform and like be seen in the world. Like this band in particular will always be like this very special bond we have. It's like twofold in that way.
And then, okay, so the last question then. What drew you to each other at this circus camp? Like when you first met?
I want to go first.
Okay, go, Susanna, go.
I remember, there's like a talent show that happens at camp where like any kid can go up and like, and perform. And I think we were like, oh gosh, I feel like it was maybe like summer between like 6th and 7th grade or something like that.
Okay.
I remember seeing, this was like even maybe a year before we became friends. I remember seeing Maya play a song and I was like absolutely floored.
Aww.
I was like, I still remember some of the lyrics of the song, but it was like, I had never seen someone perform that way before. I was like absolutely starstruck by them. And I thought that they were like the best musician I'd ever seen. And we were like,
God.
you know, like 12 probably or
so
something.
nice.
And I think I had like just started to play guitar too. And then I think the next summer we became friends and we were both like in the songwriting class at camp. So
You really motivated us writing a song together. You were like, I remember even one time being annoyed because you kept being like, we need to work on our song. We need to work on our song. And I was like, I just want to like hang out. I don't know. Like, but you were really motivated that we write a song together. And then we did write a song together. And then we got to perform it at that same,
the Tornado of Talent.
Tornado of
the
Talent.
following year. The song is called Ocean Dream.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's pretty good, honestly.
I don't think it's bad. I think it could be like a mid 2000s like folk duo banger, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we were drawn to each other because we both saw each other like performing at camp, and then
We were both pretty like outgoing with our art and like interested in performing and stuff.
mm-hmm.
Susanna was a more circus skilled person than me. Like she was like on the unicycle and juggling and stuff, and I was like, damn, what? I'm just here to like be in the songwriting class or whatever. Clown philosophy was my favorite class.
there was a lot going on.
Clown philosophy is a lot of philosophy classes in this country.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks. Maya Susanna, thank you so much for joining me today. This was an absolute delight.
Yeah, we had a great time. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.